Hi everybody and welcome to Cap at Home. Today we are going to be making abstract cardboard faces. These are really cool, very fun, and it kind of takes some inspiration from Picasso, who was known for doing these crazy faces of portraits using basic shapes like triangles, circles, and whatnot. So my name is Miss Allie and let's get started. I'll just set that there. Okay, so what we're going to need today is some cardboard, at least one full sheet, and some scraps. I have a handful of scraps over here, anything from this size, We're also going to need some scissors and a marker, pencil, and some other decorating tools. So on mine I have some glitter, I have some feathers and pipe cleaners up here. I also have some crayons, markers, and construction paper. So if you have any of those, you can use one or a combination thereof. You can also use paint. So I'll get into that as we go along. But for right now, we're going to start with cardboard. So you want to make sure you're working on a space that's okay to get a little messy. And we want to take our big piece of cardboard and we want to make the shape of our head, the main part. So if you can see on mine, I have sort of this main big shape right here. So I'm going to kind of draw that shape out on my cardboard. You can use pencil. I'm going to use marker so you can see it. And it can be any shape that you want. It doesn't have to be a specific shape. It doesn't even have to be even. It can be kind of square, it could be triangle, it can be oval, one side could be taller than the other, it's totally up to you. But I'm going to use a basic shape and then add some things on it. So once I have that, I'm going to take my scissors and cut this out. Now cardboard can be a little hard to cut out, so if you need help, ask for help. You can also use an X-Acto knife, but if you do so, make sure that you get help or assistance from an adult. The smaller pieces are a lot easier to cut out with scissors. This isn't too bad. So I'm just going to finish cutting this out. And if it gets stuck like that, then you might want to try from the other side. Now I'm using cardboard from some old boxes, but you can also use cardboard from packages, or even cereal boxes work just fine. I'm sure everyone's been ordering stuff online during this time, so I'm sure you could find some spare cardboard around. Alright, so I'm going to set my scraps aside because they might come in handy later. So I have this basic shape, and this is going to be my head shape. So I'm going to set that aside, and what I need to do is start making my facial features. So that's my eyes, nose, mouth, ears. And if you can see in my example, they're not exactly realistic. So that's the abstract part. So making something that's kind of funky shape, very colorful. So we're going to use basic shapes like triangles, circles, to make our facial features. So I'm going to start with my eyes, and so I might take some extra cardboard over here, some of my smaller pieces, and I might start drawing out some shapes. Now typically eyes kind of make like a football shape or sort of like a raindrop shape. So you can go ahead and draw those shapes out on some cardboard. Again, you can use pencil. I'm going to use marker because that way you guys can see what I'm drawing. Alright, so this might be one shape, one eye. And even if you draw the marker and you draw like the inside of the eye and then you decide to like make that part of cardboard, it's no big deal, you can cover it up. So there's another eye, and see how I did eyes that are not the same shape? That's totally cool. It adds to the abstract part. So I'm going to go ahead and cut those out. They can be any shape that you want. These are the shapes that I chose to do. But they can be any sort of shape that you want. If you want to make one eye really big and one eye kind of small, that's kind of cool too. So again, I'm going to put all my scraps aside over here. And I kind of have these two little eyes, but I might decide that maybe one eye would be cool sitting on top of another piece. So that's sort of similar to, in my example, what I have on this eye. So that might be kind of cool. So maybe I'll kind of set those together. And I might decide what I want to do and kind of place everything together before I glue anything down. And the reason for that is that way we can kind of get a sense of what it's going to look like before we like permanently glue things down. So another thing that you can think about is, let's say for an eye you want to add a 3D eyelid, so an eyelid that's sticking out. You could take one of your little scraps that you put aside and see if you can find one that fits kind of on top. So say I kind of like how that looks. Maybe I want to cut off that little corner here. But I think that looks kind of good. So maybe I'll set that aside to go there. But maybe for this eye, I want to make the middle part of the eye actually stick out. So maybe I'll draw a circle. Big circle and a small circle, and I might actually cut those out. And I'll show you what I'm talking about in a second here. It doesn't have to be circles. You could even use squares or triangles. That's totally up to you. Alright, so I could take these two small circles and put them in my eye, like so, to make sort of the eye sticking out. So maybe I have that eye set together. I'm going to set that aside. And now maybe I want to do some eyebrows. So on here you can see that I again have two different eyebrows, but they're pretty basic shapes. One's more like a crescent, one's sort of like a skinny triangle. And you can really add more details with color as well if you want to use basic shapes. But this is, again, good time to use some of your scraps. So let's say I want to make one that's sort of this shape. Sort of like a big triangle. And I can cut that out and that can go with one of my eyes. So I have this kind of shape, so that can go with one eye, and I'm going to again set that kind of in my area of completed pieces, set my scraps aside. Maybe I want to do another eyebrow that's kind of a funky shape. So maybe I do sort of zigzags. So this is a little bit more complicated, but I figure let's give it a try. Again, I drew it out first. And zigzags are actually easier than you think because it's basically just cutting out little triangles. Where if you try to do something with curves, that's a little bit harder to cut out. Just keep that in mind. And it doesn't have to be complicated. So this could be one of your eyebrows as well. So I'm going to set that over here. Now, so I kind of have my eyes ready to go. So the next thing I'm going to do is go down to my nose. So I'm just going to kind of go down the face here. And so I like to make these long noses because I think those look pretty cool on these faces, especially when your cardboard face is pretty big here. So I might take another piece of my cardboard, and I might make a big triangle. Again, you can make any shape that you want. You could make sort of like an L shape that kind of goes on to the side. You could also make a shape that sort of is like a line with two circles on the sides. That's a good that's like a good nose shape. But again, it's totally up to you. But I like my basic kind of long triangle shape, so I'm going to stick with that. I'm going to show you a cool thing in a second. So I'm going to cut this out. And it can be as long or as short as you want. And you can even make like a big circular nose. It doesn't have to be a long nose. It's totally up to you. But say this is my nose. And I have this sort of like, if you have corrugated cardboard, so that means if you looked in the side of your cardboard, you kind of see these like little lines. That means that if you peel off one top of the cardboard, you're actually going to be able to see those kind of bumps and lines. It kind of gives a really interesting texture. So sometimes it takes a minute to peel off. And some of them peel off a lot easier than others. And that's okay. Might take a second to kind of peel off that layer of cardboard. Like this one's kind of taken a while, but it is worth it because it looks so cool. And those different textures can really add to your piece. And this might be another thing where say you have, say you don't have this type of cardboard because you're using something like a cereal box or a shoe box. That's okay, because if you can find anything around your house like bubble wrap would be a really good example of something that would have texture that you could glue down. Alright. That's pretty good, just to give you an idea. So now that looks way more interesting than just the flat piece on the back because it's got some cool textures in it. So that could be your nose. You can also add something to the bottom. I like to add sort of like two little dots on the nose to show where your nostrils are. So again, you might want to draw those out. Like do some circles. So again, I'm just going to draw them and then cut them out. Like I said, circles are a little harder to do, so if you want to do triangles or small squares, that might be a little easier. And they don't have to be perfect shapes either. That kind of goes with the abstract aspect of our face, where it's totally okay if it's not perfect. Alright, so I just cut out 2 little circles, so I might add those on to the bottom of my nose here when I'm ready. So again, I'm going to set that aside. So now we have some eyes, eyebrows, nose. We need a mouth. So I like to do a couple different things with your mouth. So on this one, I sort of make 2 different shapes and I separate it, almost like the mouth is open. And this one kind of looks like a B shape and a D shape at the bottom. So like if you were doing letters and you turn them sideways. You can also do anything that's sort of like a triangle shape if you wanted. You could also do some sort of like waves. You could also do 2 rectangles and then do small triangles in the middle to do like teeth. So it's totally up to you on what you want to do. I might stick with, I kind of like this doing the B shape because I think that's easier, but I also think it's kind of just a cool shape. So I might draw one on the top, or one piece of cardboard, and another shape on the bottom. And I'm going to go ahead and cut those out. So this is where you could get a little creative if you wanted to add, if you wanted your mouth to be open, you wanted to add teeth, or if you wanted to make a tongue sticking out, you could totally do that. Again, these are just basic shapes. So if you want to do like a half circle, a triangle, rectangle, smaller squares put together, think about how easy you can turn the shapes into like basic shapes. So like this is totally a mouth. So I might set that aside and make that ready. Another thing we need to add are ears. So on the side here, I have ears, and I made them 2 different shapes because I think that's kind of fun. I also added some earrings on here because I always have earrings in. And that's just something when we get towards the end, you can start adding some little details. But for now, let's add some ears. And again, I might go with the idea of adding 2 different shapes. And so one could be sort of like a half circle, one could be sort of like a raindrop shape. And what I mean by that is sort of when it looks like this. So I might go ahead and cut those out as well. And I'll show you in a minute why cutting everything out first is kind of better. Alright, so I have 2 shapes for ears, and you can add details in the middle, sort of like the inner ear part, so the circle part. I drew those in on my example. So I have those ears, I'm going to set those aside. So I have the basic facial features. So now there's a couple other things that you could add. Like I said, if you wanted to add teeth, you could also add some big eyelashes. If you wanted to add earrings, or if you wanted to add something on top of your head, such as hair. You could also add a hat or a crown. And so now on mine, I kind of give the illusion of hair, but it's not exactly hair. I have some things kind of sticking up, and it kind of more looks like just something fun on the top of your head. If you wanted to, you could add some short spikes to make it look more like short spiky hair. You could cut out some long pieces of cardboard to make it like long hair. You could also just add pieces of cardboard or pipe cleaner coming down. That can give the illusion of hair. You also don't have to add any hair at all. I think it's kind of fun to have something on top, so I might, for this one, make a crown. Again, you can add anything you want. This is just what I'm feeling today. And that could be a basic shape like this. So something simple, 3 triangles. Again, I'm going to cut that out. And then we can start assembling, and I'll show you a couple different ways to decorate. And then you can decorate yourself, how you want it to look. Again, I'm keeping all my scrap cardboard over here because you might need it as you start to assemble. You might say, oh, a small little piece of something would be great right here, or I need some small pieces to make teeth or eyelashes. That's why we keep all of our extra cardboard till the very end. So we might have something like this. So I have all my pieces, and I'm going to take my big piece, my head, and I might start assembling on my paper, or well, paper as in cardboard. So I might take my pieces, and let's see. Let's start with my eyes over here. And again, I'm just going to kind of quickly see how I want to place some things on here. And this way I can see if I need anything else. Like if I decide that I need some funky eyebrows, or a different eyebrow shape, or some earrings, a hat, something like that. Alright. And they don't have to be exactly in place either. You can kind of turn your pieces sideways if you want to kind of give a different idea. It also adds to the abstract part of your face. If you look up Picasso Cubism portraits, so that way you can kind of get an idea of the funky faces. They're not exactly supposed to look realistic, just kind of give the idea of the faces. So let's say I have sort of this, and I might decide that on this eye, I know it's kind of hard to see like this, but on this eye, let's say I want to add some eyelashes. Well, this is where our scrap cardboard comes in handy. I could take something like this and just cut a few little strips. I might actually cut some of them in half to make them a little skinnier. And I can just go ahead and add these right in there. Again, this is the benefit of not gluing things down right away, because then we can see how we want to place things before we glue it down. Alright, so let's say I have a couple eyelashes over here, and you don't have to do the same thing to each eye either. I think it's interesting when it's not exactly even. Let's say I want to make some earrings. Earrings can be as simple as circles. On here I have some like long earrings. You could also do something kind of funky like triangles. Again, scrap cardboard is great for this. Again, you could also add something like a hat if you wanted, or hair, that's where our extra materials come in handy if you wanted to use something like pipe cleaners to give the idea of hair. Let's say I just wanted to have these small triangles for earrings. You can kind of add some aspects of like what you normally wear. Like I always wear earrings, so I might add that in, but you can also just, like, if you wear a baseball hat all the time, you could make something like that. You also could just totally go with random whatever you feel like. You could add some funky little top shapes, so that's where these kind of small pieces could come in handy up at the top, or you can use that space up here to add some of your extra materials. If you have feathers, buttons, pipe cleaners, even popsicle sticks, anything like that could work. So I want to show you a couple things as we assemble. So you can paint your cardboard. You can also cover it in, you can use construction paper to cover pieces, sort of like I did here. You can also draw right on the cardboard with crayon. Crayon actually comes up really good on cardboard. Or you can use markers to color things in. I think the more colors, textures, and patterns that you have on here, the better. But sometimes it's easier to color things before you glue them on, and so I'll give you a quick example of that. So let's say for my one eye, I want to color the inside of it white. So I might actually color this first. So I have that covered. And then I might make, let's glue that top part. Actually, hold on. Before we glue that down, we should decide if we want to cover that in construction paper or if we just want to color it. So I say, if we just color it, we can leave it and we can glue it on right now. And I'm using hot glue because it dries instantly. If you do decide to use hot glue, make sure there's an adult around to help you. Be very careful, take your time. You also don't have to use hot glue. Just using normal Elmer's glue will work just fine. It just takes a little bit longer to dry. So you can take your marker and kind of color this in. Ooh, losing my materials. Okay. You can also do marker and crayon. I think sometimes that looks kind of cool. It adds more layers. Sort of like that. And then I might take, I have a bunch of scrap paper over here. And I might take a small piece of scrap paper, cut out a circle to make the center of my eye, sort of the colored part. And again, using a glue stick, Elmer's glue is fine. It might just take a little bit longer to dry. And I might draw the center part. So that could be considered one eye. Totally done. Another thing you could do, and so the reason that we might want to do this first is that on this, for example, I put some construction paper down to create some designs in the background. So I actually glued the construction paper to the cardboard first. That's where using paint or construction paper might be helpful before putting everything down. Another good reason to do this is, say you want to use, like, you want to cover your one of your lips in paper. A really good way to do this is to glue your cardboard on the paper. Again, using Elmer's glue or just glue stick for this part is totally fine. So let's say you want to glue that on there. And now you can actually just cut along the side so you know it's the exact same shape in size. You don't have to do any weird measuring or anything. Look, now it's exactly perfect. So that's kind of the benefit of doing it that way. You can also use markers to kind of add some color and texture. Like, let's say you wanted to color inside the corrugated cardboard aspect. Some textures you could add in there. And again, like I said, the more patterns, colors, textures that you add to your portrait, your face, the better it will look. So again, like I said, let's say I wanted to take some scrap paper that I had over here, and I actually wanted to draw on some patterns first. And it can be anything. It can be super simple if you wanted to. Just some basic patterns, shapes, lines. Sometimes when it's like simple patterns, like repeating patterns, it looks really cool. So let's say I just did this really quick. Let's say I just wanted to glue this on here. What I could do is attach this part. Again, I'm going to put glue on my cardboard. And I'm just going to go ahead and actually glue this right on here. And I know it's not covering the whole paper. That's okay. I actually want that. So because I don't have anything glued down, I'm just going to kind of sweep it all down here like this. And again, you can see on the back. So again, you can do the same thing. You can just cut the side off. So the longest part of this project is decorating it how you want it. So after you have all your pieces cut out, it is up to you to decorate your face how you want it. Again, you want to make sure that you place things how you want them. Take your time figuring out your placement, your colors, your patterns. There's no rush to do this, but when you finish it, I would love to see what you created. So please let me know what it looks like at the end by emailing it to us at the CAP at College for Creative Studies email, or just posting it in the comments of this video. I'd love to see what you created. So again, you want to cut out your facial features in cardboard, figure out the placement, and then glue everything down using hot glue or Elmer's glue. All right. So once you have everything together, glued down, again, you can continue decorating using things. Don't forget, you can use things like pipe cleaners. You can use things like construction paper. You can add some feathers, buttons, glitter, anything that you have to make it as interesting as you can. So again, I have all these different aspects. The more colors and patterns you have, the better. So use what you have at home to add some really cool aspects to this. And don't forget to clean up. So when you are working like this and you have a lot of things going on, don't forget that you got to clean up your space too. So I'm going to finish this up while you're working on yours, and then I will post a picture of my finished one, and hopefully I can see your finished piece too. So thank you guys for watching. Make sure to stay tuned at 2 p.m. for another Cap at Home video. And remember that we have all of our Cap at Home videos on our Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube accounts, so make sure to check out all of our videos as well. Thanks for watching, everybody.